Kid, I want to tell you something, and I mean this sincerely. No matter what happens, don't name it after me.
The Return of the Living Dead paints the picture of a world where naught exists but loud punk rock, the antithesis of that very punk ethos which amounts to an all-encompassing conformity, and the living dead. Steam billows from grates on the street. Storm clouds form over misty cemeteries as night descends from above like a cloud of moaning terror. Punks adorning all sorts of facial jewelry and tattoos and wild hairstyles lounge about wearing tattered clothing. Meanwhile, the military stand in a rigid rank and file waiting for a pin to drop. There's nothing to worry about. Nothing at all, except the pain of being dead. Chemical warfare is the name of the game. Barrels of toxic gas developed by and currently in the hands of the United States military hold the power to both kill and reanimate innocent civilians. Who cares though? Just so long as the damned and 45 graves stay playing on the boombox and our glasses never empty, our bottles of beer never empty, that all too elusive never-ending high. Everything's cool, everything's copacetic, and there's no cause for concern, right? The truth is always a little deeper and darker than we'd like. Now imagine a world where hordes of undead roam the countryside. Humanity has virtually come to an end. In our place at the top of the food chain, the new apex predators of our planet, the living dead. But it isn't just that these walking corpses shamble in a state of base and ceaseless hunger, slowly stalking the last living beings that remain tucked away in little pockets of frail humanity. The only thing left in these creatures' existence is feeding on the living, a seemingly endless state of hunger and the slow predatory hunt for human prey. Perhaps until, after centuries, they simply decay and rot away into nothing. The final few remnants of these creatures trapped in bogs or swamps, or left to wither in scorching deserts or to freeze in barren tundras. The influence of these monsters felt for the rest of Earth's existence. As horrible as that is, the Return of the Living Dead presents a zombie much more scary and sinister, as they communicate their hunger not for people, but for brains, with one zombie in particular, and arguably the second most iconic zombie from the movie, a woman that is rotted in half, being nothing more than a head, torso, and a wiggling spinal cord, proclaiming they eat brains because it takes away the pain of being dead.
Why do you eat people?
Not people. Brains.
Brains only.
Yes.
Why?
The pain.
What about the pain?
The pain of being dead.
Hurts to be dead.
Think upon that for a moment. These are undead creatures that were once us, that are in a constant and eternal state of agony. The only possible recourse for their suffering is to consume the brains of the living. Brought back by a toxic gas developed by the US military called trioxin, aka 2-4-5 trioxin, the purpose of which, revealed in the third entry of the series, Return of the Living Dead 3, was to create unstoppable undead super soldiers, a military that attempted to harness the power of death, its eternal state, for their own nefarious purposes. What could be more abominable than that? Not just to die and be reanimated, but to be reanimated in such a state as the undead in Return of the Living Dead. These newly risen creatures aren't simply mindless devourers of flesh. They have a need for brains, the center and core of our very human essence, to ease their suffering, and they'll do whatever they can to achieve this end, including using tactics like killing paramedics, and then using their radio to call for more paramedics or police and other emergency service workers.
Everybody that comes in gets swallowed up.
Send more cops.
This level of intelligence is rarely displayed by movie monsters, especially not by the undead, and it's this change that truly emphasizes the terror of the zombies in Return of the Living Dead. They are in a constant state of agony, being virtually deathless. The series presents an undeath centered around being in a perpetual state of pain. For that pain to abate, someone must die, their brains being consumed. Eventually, humanity will be rendered extinct, and in our place will be hordes of corpses suffering for the rest of their existence. That is terrifying. An endless undeath caked in centuries upon centuries of grimy, dirty misery, left in a state of rot forever. Now, to contextualize this further, a brief examination of popular zombie media is necessary. In most zombie horror that features the classic slow-moving Romero zombie, like the original Dawn of the Dead from 1978 or the Walking Dead TV series based on Robert Kirkman's The Walking Dead graphic novels, the undead are slow and move with a rigid corpse-like gait, feasting on the living not because it's a conscious decision to do so, but because hunger is one of our most primitive drives. They are utterly mindless and have no self-awareness. There is simply nothing else for them to do. However, this isn't the case in Return of the Living Dead. Dan O'Bannon taking John Russo's novel The Return of the Living Dead, a written sequel to George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead, which was also co-written by Russo in the 1960s, opted to make a radical departure from the original zombie concept, as presented by Romero and Russo, by making the zombies virtually unkillable. Blows to the head and destruction of the brain, typically shown to dispatch the living dead, are ineffective against the zombies featured in Return of the Living Dead. Even after the total dismemberment of a reanimated medical cadaver, the individual body parts are shown moving and twitching, and it isn't until they're put inside a crematorium and burnt to ash that the zombie is destroyed. This, however, only complicates matters further, as the ash carried out of the chimney is then brought back down into a nearby cemetery when it rains, seeping into the soil and awakening an entire cemetery's worth of undead.
Dust to dust.
Imagine finally disposing of the one zombie that's causing you problems, only to awaken an entire cemetery more and wreaking havoc on an entire town with this newly risen army of the dead. Our heroes and protagonists, a gang of punks and losers that can barely hold a job, are left to fend for themselves against these running, screaming corpses. The local police and infantry's ability to contain the zombies is quickly thwarted, and the teenagers must do their best to hole up inside old factories and funeral homes to outlast the chaos. It's no surprise then that those on the fringes of society itself that do the best in situations like this, as these punks aren't so beholden to conventional life. Where the police and army fail, the punks team together and fight admirably. There is a unique symbolism inside Return of the Living Dead. Whether intentional or not is beside the point. That may have been lost on most viewers. When our most organised institutions have fallen, the military in a state of disarray, the local police and sheriff's department eaten alive, it's our band of teenagers that manages to succeed best, comparatively so, against these frenzied zombies. Plot convenience aside, there's something to be said about the youth, those more flexible in lifestyle and status, that manage to adapt better in times of turmoil or apocalypse. Even coated in a thick layer of fatal trioxane gas doesn't do much to dampen the humour these veritable children carry with them in the face of certain death and doom. How do you kill something that's already dead? Freddy, as played by Tom Matthews, quips.
If it is a reanimated body, we'd have to kill it.
How do you kill something that's already dead?
Well, how do I know, Fred? I don't know. Let me think.
It's not a bad question, Bert.
And it's a fair question. After watching a medical cadaver have his head struck by a fire axe and then dismembered, even in light of the horrifying reality of this situation, these punks fight on in the face of adversity, as they do in our everyday reality, the world inhabited by you and I. Although what we may lack in walking corpses, there's certainly no lack of challenge and adversity. Perhaps then the introduction of these brain-hungry zombies into our own world would necessitate us finally settling our differences and teaming together for a change. Let's use those fresh brains of ours before they're torn and ripped from our bludgeoned skulls. Welcome to the end of the video. I've been saying to friends, family, subscribers, followers on various different platforms that I've been meaning to do this video for at least 6 months now. I had an early draft script of it. I had it about, halfway completed, but it just wasn't the direction that I wanted to take it. So I scrapped it and worked on a new script entirely. I could honestly do a couple of different videos on Return of the Living Dead and written pieces on it, just because it may be surprising to you, but when I first watched this movie when I was a kid, I actually disliked it because I thought the zombies were too strong. They were unfair. I tell people this all the time. But nowadays, in adulthood, it is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's in my top 10 for sure. And even Return of the Living Dead Part 2, I will defend that movie to the death. And I know, especially here on YouTube, people do not like that movie. But growing up, when I was a kid, I loved that movie so much. It was just so funny and goofy and yeah. So if you've gotten to this point, I genuinely appreciate it. If you liked the content, if you want to see more videos like this, drop a sub and drop a comment as well. Let me know what you want to see me cover. And until the next one, my name is Marcel from Aussie Horror, and I'll catch you guys later.